Hello everyone, I'm Grandmaster Denes Boros, and I'm back with a Ruy Lopez Gambit, the Showalter Variation. So, there are times when you're wondering, you have gambits in the Italian, in the events, and the Scotch Gambit, but is there one in the Ruy Lopez? There are plenty. In fact, we discussed two already, two right there. So I really hope you enjoyed them. But there is a third one, and it's called the Showalter Variation. In fact, this game I played 5 months ago versus Grandmaster from Turkey, Vahap Sanal. So let's take a look. So the variation starts with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. Previously I talked about the gambit line of knight f6, d4 pawn sacrifice, and castles. However, in this variation, I'm going to do something very similar. Castles, knight takes e4, d4, knight d6, bishop a4. White is deliberately given up a pawn because black actually has neglected putting this king into safety. He takes d4. Santo Blue, aka Vahap Sanal, decided to take the pawn and taking the bait. So, as a true gambitier, I said, hey, you want my pawn? Well, have some more. Have some more. And the idea here is to put pressure on the king, involve this knight, get to that critical d5 square, and then potentially build some pressure along that b1 h7 diagonal. So c3, of course my opponent didn't want any part of that, played bishop e7. If takes, I would capture back. Bishop e7, knight d5, occupy this very, very important square. Castles, queen d3, setting up the first part of the battery. And after bishop c2, you get a splendid attack on this king. Also notice that bishop on c8 is absolutely mummified. It can't really get out of that prison. So c3, my opponent decided to play bishop e7. C takes d4, I take the pawn. And even though I'm down a pawn, not only is my opponent king is in the middle, but this knight on d6 is barricading that d pawn, so he can't really get out of that chain. For that very reason, the Turkish Grandmaster played b5, I played bishop c2. Obviously, I want to eye the h7 pawn. Knight b4, not too happy about it. If, of course, castles, I can go queen d3, and I have direct threats over there. After g6, I can make sure there are no knight b4 jumps anymore. And after knight c3, I get very good compensation for the sacrificed pawn. So that's why my opponent played knight b4 early on. Bishop b3, bishop b7, knight c3. Going for quick development, as you should always do when you're sacrificing a pawn. Castles, e3, just chasing this knight away. Therefore blocking that bishop. Queen d3, setting up the same idea. Rook e8. Bishop c2, eyeing the pawn. There is only g6. If h6 here, then check here, and it's already checkmate because of the unfortunate placement of the rook, bishop, and the pawns. g6, bishop f4, trying to press on that knight, also threatening to take on b5 later. b4, trying to get counterplay, knight a4. Not even reacting at all because that would just activate that knight. B takes a3, B takes a3, making sure there's no knight b4 jump. Knight f5, rook b1. The rook belongs on the open file. The bishop and queen loves the battery. Queen c8, d5. Pushing my opponent off the board. Bishop a6, trying to go for a tricky, very nice little tricky, but queen c3, I am not perturbed because I am concentrating on my opponent's king. Bishop f1, d takes c6, bishop e2, and this is the moment when it's worth stopping and pondering what I can play here. Seemingly the attack is at a halt, but with a beautiful sequence, you are going to smash on through your opponent's attack, opponent's position, and you'll be crushing it big time. Do pause the video here. Take a little bit of a breath. And come back after this pause. So I hope you had a little bit of a pause. You considered all your options, and if you found bishop takes f5, correct. Now I never really had mates on g7 until now, because after g takes, bishop h6, I have this idea of going queen g7, because I've got the queen and bishop combo working together as a team. Bishop f8. Now of course if my opponent goes f6, I can go queen b3, attack the king, and go queen f7, queen g7 with a devastating attack. So I would just go here, and the king is in dire straits after queen f7. So my opponent played bishop f8, bishop takes f8, rook takes f8. Now all we know is that queen alone can't really win the chess game, but we can give that a little bit of a push and a little bit of a help. Knight d4, attacking this bishop on e2, attacking that pawn on f5. Opponent decided to go queen a6, knight takes f5, setting up the mate of 2. There are both ways of mate, and even a third one on e7. So my opponent played f6, knight c5, and here my opponent resigned, rightfully so, because after queen c8 there is mate in 3. Of course my opponent resigned earlier, but in that case I have queen g3 check, can hide in the corner because it's mate on g7, king f7, but then we draw the L shape, and it is a game over once we go queen g7 check, king e8, king e7, checkmate. So I really hope you like this third Ruy Lopez Gambit called the Showalter Variation, and I hope you enjoyed my crushing victory versus the Turkish Grandmaster. And if you liked the video, please subscribe and post a comment below if you want me to do other gambits, or if you have other comments about this Ruy Lopez Gambino. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.